Eugenia McCann Piantieri,
Joseph O. Pick,
Matthew Paserno,
Dennis J. Pierce,
Bernard Petronico,
Nicholas P. Petruti,
and my cousin, firefighter Michael Edward Roberts. Engine 214, you were taken from us way too soon. There isn't a day that goes by where we don't think of you. Our forever hero, we love and miss you so much. We will never forget, and we will always keep the memory of those who we lost alive.
Elsie Carolina Osorio Oliva,
James R. Ostrowski,
Timothy Franklin O'Sullivan,
Jason Douglas Oswald,
and my titi Giovanna Porras. Titi, we all love and miss you. We know you're with us every single day. We ask to continue to watch over us, especially Grandma and Grandpa and your niece Ava. Today is a sad day, but I'm also very proud to be here every single year just to see how strong we continue to be and never forget. And also, it makes me proud to be a New Yorker because I know despite us being here and everything happened to us this day 23 years ago, we never gave up and we'll never forget.
Yo, I do not know why I'm so attracted to this place. I mean, I drive by here a lot. It couldn't be an uglier location. It's got a big like oil truck, I guess. Some broken down trucks across the street. Some old buildings that used to be like, I don't know, apple selling places up here where there are apple farms. Like, I have no idea, but for some reason, there's just something about it that's really appealing to me. Like, you can't see this, and I'm not going to stop and take the camera off, but there's a family walking under the bridge right now, and the way the light is hitting them is so beautiful. It's weird. They're coming in and out of the shadows, and I don't know, you might be able to see them as they walk past me. I'm not sure about that. But anyway, I don't know, there's something about this location that it just draws me here. And I think part of it is that I'm always drawn to places that are broken down and kind of abandoned, and it always makes me wonder what they were and what they were like and who came through these places and, you know, what made them shut down and if they're ever going to open up again. I mean, I don't even know if this truck has anything to do with this building over here, but I don't know, it's just weird. So anyway, today is 9/11, September 11th, and actually for you watching this, it's September 12th. But I'm shooting it on 9/11, and you know, I've been trying to post a video every day now. I'm not going to be doing this for much longer because I'm kind of deeply in the middle of a screenplay now. But I still am going to post consistently and quite a bit because honestly, it's like, it's good for my head, you know, to get in front of the camera and just talk sometimes, get a lot of stuff out of my body, and then I can focus on the work that I'm doing. And so I wanted to say something about 9/11 today. Every year on 9/11, since the tragedy at the World Trade Center, I like to watch the ceremonies downtown, and where they mention all the names of the people who are lost, and the family members come up and do that.
And my uncle, NYPD, ESU, Truck 7 police officer, Santos Valentin Jr., and his partner, Ronald Klopfer. You guys are amazing. You're forever our heroes. Your families miss you every day. We will always remember you. We will always honor you. and your sacrifice will never go unnoticed till we meet again.
And people gather around, and it's just very spiritual and beautiful amidst the most horrific tragedy imaginable. You know, losing a family member, like, you know, your husband or your wife or your son or your daughter or whatever. They go to work one morning and, you know, they're getting ready for the same old grind that they've been doing, whether they're an executive at Goldman Sachs or whether they work in the garage parking cars in that building or selling hot dogs or whatever. Like, everything in between. A lot of people just didn't make it that day. And I remember where I was that day. We had actually moved out of the city, and I was living up in a place called Suffern, New York. And I was still married at the time, and my wife, she was away in Pittsburgh doing a play. And so I was by myself, and I happened to have West Nile virus at that time. So I was really sick. We lived in this beautiful house. I was so sick I couldn't even get up the steps. And I was sleeping on the floor in our living room every night, and my dog, Stinson, was literally sleeping on my chest every night. He would not stay away from me during that whole time. And I had to kind of get it up every day to take him for a walk, you know, because that's the great thing about having a dog. Like, no matter what you're going through, you got to get up and get out because you got to take care of your dog, you know. And so we went for a walk that morning, and I was dragging, you know, I wasn't feeling well. And we drove about a mile into the middle of town in Suffern because we lived about a mile away. And all of a sudden I heard more sirens at one time than I had ever heard in my whole life. Like, it was like one after another, after another, after another. It just kept starting. It was like a cascade of sound, you know, and it just got louder and louder and louder because it was an accumulation of all these sirens. And then all of a sudden, through this little town of Suffern, it's a tiny little village, I start seeing police cars and fire trucks and ambulances like flying down Main Street, just flying.
And my son, Norman Scott, we miss you every day, and you will never be forgotten.
Now, mind you, this is a town that's probably 30 minutes north of Manhattan. I mean, it's not far, but it's certainly not that close. But I was like, what the hell is going, like, it was so scary and the energy was so weird. And I'll never forget, I opened the back door I had a hatchback at the time, and I'll never forget that Stinson got out of the car, and as soon as this happened, boom, he just jumped right back into the car. Just jumped into the car. He had never done anything like that before, ever. And then, you know, I was trying to get him out of the car because I was like, we gotta walk. And then he jumped in, like, on my chest. Now, he was like 50 or 60 pounds. Well, he was probably 60 pounds at this time, and he literally jumped to my chest. And I'm holding him, and he's just looking at me like, yo, we got to go home. And so threw him in the back, and I went back home, and I turn on the news, and I see what's going on, you know. And I see the towers on fire, and I see all this stuff, and it's just surreal. And I'm watching the news, and you know, I'll never forget watching the second tower come down. I don't even remember if I saw the plane hit, but I do remember in real time, live, on TV, seeing it. And you know, my reaction was crazy. I took Stinson, I threw him back in the car, and I just drove to the city. Because I felt like that's my fucking city. And you know, it's interesting because one of my best friends was living in Rhode Island at this time. And I didn't know her during this time, but I met her years later, and she told me a similar story. She said when she was living in Rhode Island, she realized right after 9/11, she had to move back to the city. Like, I think New Yorkers just felt so, like, so, I don't know, so attacked by that. It was such a visceral thing. It was just weird, you know. It was obviously something none of us had ever experienced before, you know. And nobody knew what was going on. That was the thing. So anyway, I drove right to the city, and I couldn't get there, so we drove to Jersey City. And well, first of all, I drove right to the George Washington Bridge. Obviously, everything was closed. They weren't letting anybody go through. I drove down this road called River Road. I kept going down. I tried to get to the Holland Tunnel. I couldn't get in. And so I drove to Jersey City. Well, first we went to Hoboken, then we went to Jersey City, and I wound up by the Liberty Memorial Park or something like that, Liberty State Park, where the Statue of Liberty Park on the Jersey side. And we were up on this kind of hill. And I just sat there and watched. I felt like I was watching the city burn. Like it was the weirdest thing in my life. It was terrible. You know, and there were people sitting around and people were silent, but you could hear people crying and screaming, but it was mostly silence. It was terrible, you know, and I felt helpless. Like, you know, what do you do in a situation like that? You can't help, you can't do anything. So anyway, I went home, and I don't know, you know, like I was having all these irrational feelings. You know, this is the first time we had been attacked like that in this country, and I felt like people were like going to come to my house and try to hurt us, and it was just so weird. You know, totally, like I said, irrational, based on nothing. It was just like these visceral emotions that I had. And, you know, I just think it's, well, I want to tell you a story real quick before I get to the end of this video, but, you know, a few days after that, I was in a town called Nyack, which is one of my favorite towns in the world. And Nyack is like about 10 miles north of the George Washington Bridge. It's a Hudson River town. It's a beautiful town. It's an artsy kind of town. It's really, really a beautiful, amazing place. And I was fortunate enough to have lived there for about 3 years. But I was visiting there on this day. And I'll never forget, this was like about 3 days after 9/11, and people were still really raw about the whole thing. And I know I was like completely just freaked out still. And so I was walking down Main Street in Nyack. I was right in front of this store that I know it used to be a jazz club called The Office. I was standing right there. Anybody who knows Nyack knows what I'm talking about. I'm standing right in front of where The Office used to be. Now it's some kind of bar. And I had a smoothie in my hand, a green drink that I had gotten at the health food store down the block. And so I'm drinking my, you know, greens, my kale and spinach and parsley and ginger and everything that I had in it. And all of a sudden there are some kids across the street. And one of the kids looks right at me. Sorry, I'm like having allergies. A kid looks right at me from across the street and he screams, "He's got a bomb, he's got a bomb, he's got a bomb." And I'm like, what the fuck, you know? And he's screaming, he's yelling, and all of a sudden people are going crazy, and I see a cop coming towards me. And so I don't know what the hell's going on. And then all of a sudden I look at this kid. And, you know, well, let me back up a little bit, because, man, this affects me even talking about it. But while he's screaming that, it shook me so much that I threw my drink up in the air, and it just spilled all over the place, you know, including all over my pants. And I saw a cop down the block, but he was just kind of looking, you know. And I looked at this kid, and he was laughing. And I guess he thought that was a funny joke a couple of days after 9/11. So there was a time in my life where I could be pretty, let's say, proactive towards assholes, especially if somebody was like racist or bullying somebody else, or if I felt like there was some kind of injustice or somebody needed help, I would always go help somebody, you know. And I'm not trying to say I'm some kind of hero or some kind of shit like that, but I'm just saying I'm not the guy who's going to sit there and do nothing. And so I saw this kid laughing. I slowly walked across the street, and he was laughing right in my face. And he's like, "Sorry." And so I felt like I got superhero powers all of a sudden. I grabbed him by his neck and his shirt, and I literally lifted him up and threw him on the ground. And I just got on top of him, and I just felt like I was losing control, you know. And he's screaming, and his friends are screaming. There's a girl with him. She's like, "Stop, stop," you know, blah, blah. And I'm like, "Motherfucker, are you fucking kidding me?" You know, and I was going crazy, and all of a sudden I feel a bunch of arms on my back, and it was 3 cops. They just pulled me off. Sorry, this is really emotional for me to talk about. But they pulled me off, and the cop said, "Yo, I saw the whole thing. That was assault." He said, "But I would have done the exact same thing. So what I'm going to tell you is to take yourself home, do your laundry, relax, don't come back to Nyack for like a week, and we'll forget about this whole thing. Okay?" And I said, okay. So he let me go. And those are my strongest memories about 9/11. Not, you know, other than friend stories who were in town, like right there when it happened. I have one friend who walked all the way home and he was covered in ash by the time he got home. He lived on 105th in Amsterdam, and by the time he got home from way downtown, because people had to walk home because the trains were closed, he said he was just covered in ash. You know, I have so many stories. I have friends who were in the buildings that day. I actually have a friend who worked in that building and who worked upstairs, so he would have been killed, but he decided to not go to work that day. And his wife was in the building when there was a bomb in the basement of that building a few years earlier, and she was there on this day and she escaped. She retired the next day. She was like, yo, 2 times, that's like enough for me, I'm done. Like, those are 2 warnings. I'm finished. So anyway, I think it's really beautiful that people honor those that were lost that day. I think it's important to do that. And one comment on TV today really stood out to me, and I wasn't able to capture it. After I saw this, I started to record from my TV. So footage doesn't look so good, but I just picked up my GH5 and shot. I didn't have any lights or anything. But anyway, this one woman said, who had lost her son, she goes, I just want to say, divided, we are Americant, but united, we are American. And I thought that was such a beautiful statement, so relevant to this moment that we're in right now in this country and throughout the world, really. And I also love that I had something sitting right next to my TV that's called the Tree of Life.
Jimmy Riches,
Alan J. Richmond,
John M. Rigo,
Frederick Charles Rimmel III.
That came from Kenya. And it's literally people on top of one another, and it represents people climbing and building with one another on each other's shoulders until they get to the top. And they just keep, it's like one person on top of another, on top of another. And I also have a picture of the towers in my apartment that I always have with me. And honestly, I used to eat lunch there every once in a while with my father. And if I'm being really honest, I always thought they were ugly. You know, like the architecture in New York is so beautiful when you compare it to like the Chrysler Building or the Empire State Building, or if you walk up and down like Park Avenue or West End Avenue or Riverside Drive, and you see these beautiful pre-war buildings that are like works of art, you know, the Ansonia and the Upper West Side. It was just like 2 big rectangles sticking out of the ground. But I'll love those buildings forever now. So anyway, that's my memories of 9/11. Thanks for watching on 9/12. And I won't be this emotional next time. Take care of one another. So all we have is each other.
Until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. And if I could say one thing, divided, we are Americant. United, we are American. God bless you all.